And welcome back to BNC Live. I'm Tashanea Whitlow. If you're just joining us right now, we've been having a discussion, better yet, about lawmakers' efforts to finish a bipartisan infrastructure deal this week, which is also sparking the question, will public transportation prevent this bill from actually meeting the August deadline? That's when lawmakers go on recess. So to help us finish this conversation out, we want to welcome back political filmmaker Stefano Da Fre, who is live with us in New York City. So we just heard that sound from Ohio Senator Rob Portman, who says both sides are about 90% of the way, through with an agreement. But however, there's still the issue of funding, which is a major issue. Can you talk, how do they plan on paying for this $1.9 trillion plan?
Look, I think the fundamental thing about funding is that they know that, for example, if you look at a lot of economic studies that have been done, this infrastructure plan will help reduce the GDP. So for them, they're looking at it as an investment. This is going to have to be a tremendous amount of money that we're going to have to borrow, just like the COVID packages that we've done the past years. In the first package and then in the second package. But this has to be seen as money that will not be just dropped. It will be an investment over a long period of time. We think about the impact that FDR's package had all that period of time going all the way back 50, 60 years ago. This is the same type of investment into this country, from water to bridges to roads to high-speed internet and broadband. And that's how we have to look at it as this country. It's going to be a lot of money, but it's worth the investment.
Okay, so Stefano, I got to ask you about this because Republicans, they basically wanted to gut out a portion of that bill, which was the IRS overhaul, which would have tightened oversight. That would have brought in about $100 billion, which would have helped, a tremendous amount, pay for the $1.9 trillion plan we're dealing with right now. Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, a Republican, says that there's about $50 billion in unspent federal unemployment benefits. Do you think that equates to that $100 billion, they left on the table? And why was it so important for them not to include that?
It's not even remotely close. If you're looking at the unemployment benefits that are left there, those should be left for individuals who need them, who need those unemployment benefits. It's not going to cover that amount of money that they said. And the Republicans have an entire agenda that is focused towards business, not so much on labor, but more on business. And if you look at this aspect, if you look at the infrastructure bill, this is part of the negotiation that it's taking so long. They want more businesses to benefit, whereas less costs are going to be spent on some of the actual impact on the paying of the jobs. And they want to be able to figure, how can we benefit other businesses that are getting involved through this plan? This is a classic sort of Republican move, but irrespective, once they find a deal together, this will be a very, very positive difference maker for this country.
Okay, so you spoke of Republicans. Now, let's talk about Democrats. We know that President Biden has been very open about his love of trains. You're going on to discuss how he traveled back and forth on Amtrak. Now, a major talking point for Dems is the roughly $1 trillion package to go towards public transportation. Some GOP, some even threatening to oppose the deal if it doesn't include that. Can you just talk about why public transit is such a high priority for Dems and how it will impact Black and brown communities?
Well, the first thing is it's accessible. Right? Trains, Amtrak is accessible. You don't have a lot of overhead to owning a car, the debt of a car. But most importantly about trains is the amount of carbon dioxide that is released through trains. And as we become more efficient with them, is extremely beneficial to the climate. So how does that affect Black and brown communities? It means that you have a better infrastructure that allows people to get from point A to point B in smaller periods of time. This is very, 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 very important, because the trains, you can tell anybody who's been to, as we know, when I was in France and in Europe, and anyone who's traveled to Europe or anywhere else in the country, our infrastructure for trains are like 40, 50 years behind. We are behind the rest of the world in terms of our efficiency of trains. And part of having a green future, part of having an effect that helps include everybody, bridge the wealth gap, is to have accessible trains that are available in local communities and also interstate.
Well, Stefano, I know President Biden has discussed this a lot. Basically, it's about the United States being able to compete on the global level. Now, if we're trying to compete, I mean, China has the first high-speed commercial train that goes up to 267 miles per hour. How do we compete with that?
We have to get
Seriously.
better. Well, we have to start. Listen, we have to start. We have to start from step one, right? Step one, step two, step three, step four. We can't look at it as though it's this insurmountable thing. You know, one of the things to realize, I think, about America is that, you know, we were not the first people to orbit space. We were not the first people to unman somebody in space in the 1960s, but we were the first people to land in the moon. And so never count America out, because America does not usually start well first, but it can often finish it very well. I think of the vaccines in the same way, with Pfizer and Moderna, both American companies. So I think let's not get too. We have to start somewhere. And the other thing is, China is not a democracy. You can play a long year plan with China, right? China can stay, you know, 10, 20 years with their president and their ruling communist party. We flip over all the time. I mean, every 4 years is another president. The houses may change in 2022. So, you know, I'm sympathetic towards the fact that democracy has a lot of changing players.
And you're
so,
optimistic, which is important. Stefano Da Fre, always a pleasure. Thank you for your insights, sir, and we look forward to welcoming you back here on BNC Live. And after the break, fighting a losing battle. Less than half of the U.S. eligible for a vaccine is fully vaccinated. But what about the other half? What's holding up the roll-up of sleeves? It's also putting a major roadblock in our pandemic recovery. After the break, one dire prediction of how much worse it could actually get if vaccine holdout continues. We'll tell you more about that after the break. You're watching BNC Live.